And she was like, would you like some gas and air, love? I was like, yes, give me the gas and air. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you are new. Lavonne here. We are still on the pregnancy bandwagon, and today I'm going to be sharing my birth story. I'm going to try and make this a non-scary experience because I genuinely think I had a positive birth experience. My baby said. Now, when you hear the details, it may not sound that way in some parts of it, but to me it was a really positive experience, and I'm very, very grateful for the experience that I got to have giving birth to my first child. And I know not everybody can say that about their first birth, so if you find this video at all triggering or it brings up painful memories, please just skip. It's okay. You can support any of my other videos if this is not going to be a video that is helpful for your journey. Or if you're about to give birth and you've been really, really anxious, maybe this might not be the video for you. But if you would love to know, get some tips, tricks, just know how my experience was, then maybe this video might be for you. A few disclaimers before I get into it. This is going to be very, very candid. I'm going to be very, very honest about my personal experience, okay? Not everybody's experience of birth is the same. Not even every birth is the same from the same person. So please take this with a grain of salt. This was my experience. Because of the fact that I'll be sharing things around birth, labor, and stuff like that, there will be some details that are very, candid. So if you are not the target demographic, please leave. Please leave, okay? Like if you know me in person and you're like my uncle or a male presence in my life, there may be parts of this that you don't want to hear, so please leave. But of course, if you want to know because you want to be able to support the people in your life, like for example, if your wife is expecting or whatever, feel free. It's a safe space, it is on the internet, so other people will get to watch this. But I'm just saying, if you don't want to know the details of me giving birth, don't watch. Let's get into it. To start off my birth story, I have to go back to my due date. Around my due date, I started to feel a lot of intense cramping. Bit of a step up from Braxton Hicks, because I'd been having Braxton Hicks since about 28 weeks. This was a step up. It was a little bit more intense, but nothing too crazy. Like I could walk through it, I could talk through it, I could do stuff even when feeling those cramps, but they were a little bit more intense than your typical Braxton Hicks. Of course, because it was around my due date, I was very, very excited, thinking, oh my goodness, this baby is gonna come on time. I already shared in my pregnancy journey that I thought my baby was gonna come early because of my mom's experience with pregnancy. So by the time I got to 40 weeks, I was like, oh, we are way overdue, let alone 40 plus. A couple of days after my due date, I had a midwife appointment where she offered to give me a membrane sweep, which is basically where they kind of try and encourage your cervix to dilate. I declined the sweep at that point because I didn't want any interventions until I felt like it was medically necessary, and being a couple of days away from my due date for me didn't feel medically necessary. Now, I did agree to get a sweep a week later, which would put me at just before 41 weeks pregnant. And lo and behold, when I had that appointment, I was very much still pregnant. So this is a couple of days before I gave birth. So this is the Wednesday. I gave birth on Friday morning, okay? So on the Wednesday before I gave birth, nearly a week past my due date, I had a midwife appointment and I got a membrane sweep. Now, the sweep was very, very, very uncomfortable. It wasn't painful, but it was very uncomfortable for me. And my sister had already prepped me because she had just given birth like 3 months ago. She had already prepped me and told me to relax and to take deep breaths and stuff. So I think it was uncomfortable because I was already relaxing because she told me what to expect. I can imagine if you don't know what to expect, it would be painful because they really get up in there. So she did the sweep, and luckily my cervix was very easy to find, so she didn't have to stay there long. I was already 2 centimeters dilated at this point, which explains the cramping I'd been feeling for the past week. So I was like, okay, that's good. I said, from today and tomorrow, we are walking this baby out. I went on a walk after that appointment. I was doing a lot of curb walking. I think from like 38 weeks, I was drinking a lot of raspberry leaf tea. I was having a lot of pineapple, all the things that you're encouraged to do to try and bring on labor, I was doing, and I was walking pretty much every day. But remember, at this point, I am over 40 weeks pregnant. My bump was to the ceiling, and I was very tired and in a lot of pain with movement and walking. So I couldn't walk for long or for much, but I was doing what I could, basically. That night, after I got the sweep, that's when I started to feel what I now know as early labor contractions. At the time, I just thought, this is just a more intense version of Braxton Hicks, but I should have known that this is above that, because I literally jumped out of bed because I was in that much pain. And I was hunched over the side of my bed going through these contractions, right? It was like 3 a.m. and I basically was in and out of sleep between then and the morning with these contractions. And my husband at the time, sorry, not my husband at the time, at the time of my pregnancy, he's still my husband. My husband at that time of the pregnancy was helping me a lot with like counter pressure and giving me massages when I needed it. But for me, I just needed to just hunch over and just let the contraction come, if that makes sense. I then started to practice my breathing techniques I had been learning on YouTube so that it could help me for labor. Obviously at this point, I didn't know that labor was closed. I was hoping though, because I didn't want to get induced, and I'd been booked in for an induction for the Friday if I didn't go into spontaneous labor. So Tuesday night into Wednesday night, that's when I had the cramping. I got my sweep on Wednesday, and then Wednesday night into Thursday morning, it was the same thing. I experienced a super intense Braxton Hicks, but early labor basically. 3 a.m. again, like I was up. Super intense pain, but it wasn't progressing. Thursday now comes. My husband and I, we went to get food. I really wanted to have McDonald's. So we went to get McDonald's, and then we went for a long walk at the park, a nice garden area near us. And I did loads and loads of curb walking there as well. And we walked around. Now, this day, I should have known that I was gonna go into labor because my contractions were even more intense and I was having them throughout the day. The day before, I was having them like sporadically, but on Thursday, I was having them throughout the day. So like during our walk, I kept having to stop and like, you know, breathe and stuff. And I was even holding onto a tree. Like, it was so intense. But at the time, I was still telling myself it's Braxton Hicks because my water hadn't broken. I hadn't lost my mucus plug. There was nothing that was telling me that I'm in labor, but I was already actually in labor at this point. I start timing my contractions and they're getting closer and closer together. I think the closest we got was about 7 minutes apart. I don't know if it's different in every country, but in the UK, for you to be considered in active labor, your contractions have to be 5 minutes apart for an hour, right? So you have them every 5 minutes for at least an hour. Then you can go to the hospital. But because mine were like 7 minutes apart and it wasn't consistent, I couldn't go to the hospital yet. We curb walk and we like worshipped, we prayed, we did all the things and we had fun. Like we had such a nice wholesome day. And I think I started to relieve myself of that pressure to like give birth, because I think that's what was really weighing me down. I felt the pressure to like have the baby soon because I really didn't want to get induced the next day. But I let that go and I said, you know what, the baby will come when the baby is ready. I made a prayer to the Lord and I said, Lord, I really don't want to get induced. I don't want to have my waters broken. I just want it all to happen so that I can just experience the labor freely, if that makes sense. Because I've heard that contractions from being induced are so much more painful than natural contractions. We got home after that long walk. I was on the phone to one of my sisters, the one who just had a baby a few months ago, right? We were talking, and I was telling her about all the intense cramps I'd been having. Anyway, I say to her, oh, I feel like I'm gonna have another contraction. Because at this point I was calling them contractions because like, this is not Braxton Hicks. And I remember so vividly that contraction like it was yesterday. I was trying my technique that I'd been doing for the past 2 days of just like hovering over my bed, right? And it was not working. I had to jump up, go to the landing and grab onto the railing, and I let out this scream, right? It was intense. And I screamed my husband's name because he was downstairs with my mom. It wasn't even his first name. I screamed his middle name. His Shona middle name. I screamed for him to come upstairs. So him and my mom run upstairs, and honestly guys, it was so intense and I was crying, like tears were flowing down my face. I had not felt anything more painful in my whole pregnancy. In the last few days, that was the most intense contraction I think I had up until that point, obviously. We're like, okay, this is intense. Anyway, I go to the bathroom and then I feel a trickle. When I was like trying to sort myself out, like just a gush of water fell on the bathroom floor and my water broke. So we were so happy, right? We were like, yay, because we really wanted that to happen. Naturally, we're like, oh my gosh, we thank God, like the prayers have worked. Little did I know what I was about to experience. Because once my water broke, contractions went from about a 4 in the pain to like a 10. I kid you not. It was like day and night. My whole life just pivoted in that moment. So we got everything ready. Everything was already in the car, like my hospital bag, the baby's bag, stuff like that, the car seat, everything was already there. So we literally just needed to leave. I didn't even get changed. I stayed in the dress I'd been in all day, got into the car. And that ride to the hospital felt like the longest 7 minutes of my life, because I was in so much pain and I didn't realize it at the time, right? But I felt a lot of my labor in my lower back. And so things like sitting down, my God, it was a world of pain, okay? It was so painful. And now my contractions were much closer together. They were every 5 minutes, if not closer, sometimes even every 3 minutes, right? So the game had leveled up, basically. I was on level 20. I was no longer on level 2. We get to the hospital and they triage you. They triage me. So it's like the normal stuff that you do for your appointments. You do a wee sample, they take your blood pressure and stuff like that. But because I was in active labor, they also had to check how dilated I was. Now, for them to be able to do this, they had to put me on a monitor, which meant they had to lay me on my back. Like I just said, I was having back labor. So laying on my back felt like the worst form of torture. I was screaming and I felt so bad because in the waiting room, there was 2 other pregnant women who were not as far ahead as me. And so I'm sure they were thinking, oh my goodness, this is what we have to look forward to, because I was in so much pain. Like I remember I was holding on to anything I could. Like when we were in the triage room, at some point I nearly held on to a painting and my husband had to redirect me to hold on to the door because he was like, you're gonna pull down the building. Because I was, oh gosh, I can not feel, but I can remember that so vividly. Get to me being checked and nurse is like, okay, I'm gonna check you. She checks my cervix. I'm screaming because I'm getting contractions. And I was about 4 centimeters dilated at this point. And I'm like, that makes sense because I was only 2 centimeters yesterday. So the rest of the day, I think I was dilating slowly but surely. And she's like, okay, so we can admit you to a room because you're obviously far enough along. And she was like, would you like some gas and air, love? I was like, yes, give me the gas and air. Bit of context, I wanted to attempt an unmedicated birth as much as I could. And if I felt like it was too intense, I was willing to get the epidural, but it wasn't my first thought. I really wanted to see how far I could go before getting any sort of drugs. So gas and air was what I asked for, just to like help me through the contractions. And I was inhaling it, and the nurse was like, no, try and like time it with your contractions so it can work while you're contracting. I was not using it well, let's just put it like that. Anyway, we get to labor and delivery and they put me on a monitor again, have me on my back. And this is a story for another day, but I basically had an initial midwife who was not my midwife for long. An initial midwife who put me back on my back, even though we had told her I'm really struggling being on my back, right? She puts me on my back and she says, oh, you have to stay like this. I'm not gonna go too much into this story because I don't want, I want peace, not problems. Doctors came round and they were doing rounds, and one of the doctors said, oh, why is she on the monitor? And basically the reason why I'd been put on the monitor was incorrect because the midwife thought I'd had reduced fetal movements when I came in, but she had misread my chart and it was reduced fetal movements at some point in my pregnancy, but this was when I was like 20 weeks along. So I didn't need to be on the monitor because I was absolutely fine. The doctor's like, oh, take her off the monitor then, she doesn't need to be on this. And then that doctor, and I thank God for that doctor every single day, he asked me, he was like, what would you like what is your like dream birth experience? And I said, I really wanted to be in the water, like in the pool. I wanted to have a water birth, right? And he's like, you can absolutely have that. Like there's no need for us to be monitoring you because you're absolutely fine. Baby's fine, you're fine, you can have your water birth. And the midwife that I had then was very adamant that they don't do water births. So they said they're going to check if there was another midwife available. And lo and behold, there was. Thank God. Because this midwife and her student was so amazing. They were the best team I could have asked for. Between her, the student midwife, my husband, and my sister, and the Holy Spirit, we were just in like a different ball game. Mind you, I am still having contractions, but I felt a lot better because I was no longer on my back and I was walking a bit. We were going to the other room that had the pool and everything. So we get there, the lights are dim, she fills the tub with warm water. I change into my little pool outfit, I get into the water, and I immediately felt so much better. The heat from the water and like the buoyancy, the fact that I was kind of floating above it, I could like bounce through my contractions. It felt like I was on a bouncy ball, but like all over. The tub that we had even had speakers inbuilt into the tub, so we could play our own music, and we had worship music playing pretty much the whole night. And I had my sister, I had my husband. It was so beautiful. I was just so happy. Don't get me wrong, I was still very much in pain, but the contractions felt so much better in the water and not laying on my back, right? And I was breathing through it. My sister was helping me with my breathing techniques. At this point, it's probably about 1 a.m. So this is long. My water broke at 7. We got to the hospital about 8 o'clock. This is now like 1 a.m. So it's been a few hours. That's one thing that I would say prepare for when it comes to labor. It can be very long, especially if it's your first baby. I started to feel the urge to push. And my midwife was like, you know what, you know your body well, do whatever feels natural to you. Start pushing in the water, pushing with every contraction basically. The contractions are still intense. I still was using the gas and air, but it was starting to make me feel a bit woozy. So I just stopped using it, to be honest, at this point. And I was just relying on my breathing techniques, holding on to my husband, holding on to my sister, and prayer. It was really Holy Spirit and vibes at that point. We were laughing in between, like we were having little snacks and Lucozade, that orange Lucozade. I'll forever have that taste in my mouth. We had a bit of toast, like it was fun. And then obviously the contractions would come and would have the intensity and then it would subside. I was pushing in the water for about 2 hours. Which sounds so crazy, but time really didn't feel the same as time feels now. It felt really transient. It felt still and fast at the same time. So I didn't really feel the 2 hours per se, but I did think like, oh, this is taking a long time. And to be fair, my baby didn't descend before I went into labor. So I'll insert a picture of my bump the day that I went into labor. She was very much up here. And even whilst I was still in labor, she was still very high. My midwife checks me and she's like, okay, it doesn't look like the baby is any closer than the first hour you started pushing. So let me put you back on the table and check how dilated you are, just in case you're not dilated enough. So she checks how dilated I am, and I was 8 centimeters dilated. This is very, very important because at this point, I felt another shift. You know, the first shift that I felt when my water broke, I felt another shift at this point. And I don't know if it's because I came out of the water and got a cervical check. I don't know if it's because I'd been pushing for so long with no success, or if it's the fact that I was at 8 centimeters, so now I was in transition, right? But the contractions amped up a level. Another thing that made it really, really difficult at this point was my midwife said, okay, because you're only 8 centimeters dilated, I need you to stop pushing. So when the contraction comes, forget everything you've been doing for the past 2 hours and blow it away. I was like, blow it away. The first few that came, I tried, but it was so hard because my body was in the mindset that I'm pushing now, and it wasn't allowing me to do anything other than pushing. So fighting the urge to push was so painful. I would say that was probably the most painful part of labor, but I don't know if it is the most painful part because I was in transition. I'm like trying to breathe away the contractions. It's just, it was just not working. So I was just pushing, I'm not gonna lie. And so my cervix was getting a little bit angry as well. We had to move back to the suite that I was in initially because she couldn't really hear the baby's heartbeat really well on the Doppler. So they had to put something on to like connect the monitor inside my cervix so they could monitor the baby's heart rate that way. Luckily, I didn't have to stay on my back. I could be on all fours. I could be on my side, which I laid on my side for part of it. And then I went on all fours for another part of it. And I went on a birthing stool. At this point, now I'm just pushing. My midwife was like, you know what, it's okay. Just push, because you obviously can't stop pushing and it's okay. I'd already pushed for 2 hours in the water, stopped pushing, but then obviously I was still pushing. Maybe tried to stop pushing for another 2 hours until about 5 a.m. And then from about 5 a.m, no, I was pushing again. So I was pushing again. I was on the side. I was on all fours. I was on the birthing stool. And now I would say pushing itself wasn't painful. If anything, it felt like a relief from the pain of contractions, like a distraction, because the contractions were the most painful around this point. But because I had to push every 3 minutes, I wasn't feeling them as heavily, if that makes sense. So I wasn't even really using gas and air that much. I was just holding on to my husband, holding on to my sister. They were helping me, coaching me through. We were listening to the same song over and over and over again on a loop, because that's the song that had kind of got me to a place of trusting that my water would break. And I was really in faith at this point. We're pushing. It's been a long time. And I was getting very tired. I was getting so tired that everything was woozy. I don't think I was even in the room anymore. I was just on the clouds or something, because everything felt so in the air. And I was tired because I also hadn't slept since like 3 a.m. the day before. I'd only had a McDonald's at like 2 p.m. and a couple of slices of toast in labor. So I was tired, I was hungry, I was in pain. I was so ready to be done. I'd been pushing for a while and it just didn't feel like we were getting any closer. The baby had descended a bit. I was pushing and the baby's chin got stuck. They called for a head midwife and she was like, okay, I'm gonna have to put you back on the bed so we can kind of protect your perineum and we can guide through the pushes because of the fact that baby's chin is stuck. So they put me back on the bed on my back, which I didn't want, but at this point I was like, you know what, it's okay. We're already not in the water, so it's fine. So they were guiding me through my pushes and they're like, don't do like big pushes, do tiny, tiny breaths with each contraction, like, and then stop. And then stop. So we did that a few times and it didn't really seem like we were getting much success. So she was like, oh, I may have to do an episiotomy because the baby's chin is stuck. And I think I heard the word episiotomy and it must have invoked an inner strength that I had lost, because the next contraction I got after that, I think I pushed with all the strength I had. And I pushed and I held it and I held it and I held it. And my baby flew right out. She didn't come out a little bit, like her head, and then the rest of the body as planned. She flew. Luckily, she didn't fall because there was loads of midwives at this point. And she cried and they put her on my chest and I held her. My husband cried, my sister was crying, the midwives were crying. It was so beautiful. And in that moment, I felt so much relief. Because in my head, I think I realized that, oh my gosh, I'm done. I'm done with the pain. I'm done with pushing. I'm done with pregnancy. And my baby is here. And I was so happy in this moment. And I think the adrenaline really, really distracted me because I had actually had a pretty substantial tear. But I couldn't feel anything. I'll be honest, I couldn't feel anything. They gave me an injection to birth my placenta. And then now the midwife came to me and was like, okay, you had a really substantial tear. And because I was bleeding a lot, basically. I think I lost about 1 liter of blood in birth. And so she was like, I need to check the severity of the tear. And this part is going to be really painful. So I would recommend you get your gas and air back because I had not been using it at this point. She said, I recommend you get the gas and air. I said, give me the gas and air. I think I screamed harder than I screamed when I was giving birth. That was so painful. And of course, I understand why it was painful because I had a really deep tear that went into the muscle. So in terms of grading, I had grade 3 tear and even a 3C tear. So I was this close to a 4th degree, which is not ideal. Far from the ideal, actually. I think the Lord shielded me from knowing about the degrees of tearing, because I think had I heard that and I knew what that meant, I would have been really discouraged about my experience of giving birth, and I really wanted to just enjoy that high of the fact that my baby was here. So they told me, but I didn't know what that meant. And they were like, okay, we're gonna have to take you in to theatre to correct the tear, and obviously like make sure you're not bleeding anymore and stuff like that. And I was like, okay, whatever you have to do what you have to do. I was holding my baby, I was so happy. They put a cannula in my arm, they take me to theatre, and at this point I was genuinely falling asleep. So drowsy, my eyes were closed. I couldn't even speak, right? Because I'd been screaming for like 12 hours. So my voice was gone and I couldn't speak, to the extent that the nurses had to like bring their ear close to me to hear me talk. So they take me to theatre and they had to give me a spinal because I didn't have an epidural. Bearing in mind, I had a tear and I had to sit up to get my spinal. And I remember like every movement felt so painful at this point because obviously I had no medicine in my system. The adrenaline was slowly wearing off. They gave me the spinal and initially it didn't work because I could feel everything. So then they had to wait a little bit. I guess increase the dose. I don't know what they had to do. And then I couldn't feel anything. And then they were like, okay. And then I laid back and they did the correction of the tear. They took me to recovery and they gave me back my baby and I went to recovery. I was so tired. As soon as we got there, I think I looked at my baby and as soon as my baby fell asleep, I fell asleep. And I slept. Saw our parents first and they brought us food. And then I fell asleep. The only reason we woke up is because the midwives came and they came to like support with like breastfeeding and latching and stuff like that. So that's literally the only reason why we woke up. And they all had to do some checks for me and for baby. They do the checks and at this point, adrenaline is still very much high. My spinal hasn't worn off. My legs feel very numb and tingly, but it's slowly wearing off. So I'm starting to feel a little bit of pain. They gave me morphine as well. So it wasn't extremely painful, but it was more painful than like you would expect, right? We had our first night with the baby and it was beautiful. I was staring at her all the time. The drugs were starting to wear off though, and so the pain was starting to get real, I'll be honest. And I was very uncomfortable, but I was so happy. I was so happy, and I don't think I had accepted the reality of recovery because I just had my baby and that's all I wanted, to just leave with both me and the baby alive and well. And I got that and I was so grateful for that. We stayed in the hospital for one night. And next day, I did the rest of my checks. The baby did all of her checks and they discharged us that evening and we were able to go home. Now the ride back home with the 1,000 speed bumps, wouldn't recommend. With all those stitches. Oh God, that was so painful. Again, I was just deep breaths and just doing my best basically. We got home, our moms were both here and they'd made the house so nice and lovely and cozy for us, and like they even got us like new rugs. The house was spotless, it was beautiful. They like changed our bedding and everything. It was really, really nice. My husband like helped me up the stairs. Yeah, I couldn't really do much. He helped me up the stairs, helped me get into bed, and yeah, we had our first night at home. I will say the first few days of recovery were probably the hardest because things like going up and down the stairs, getting in and out of the shower, even sitting down was extremely painful. And at this point, I obviously didn't have the hospital grade medicine. I only had codeine and ibuprofen and paracetamol at home. And that was really, really tough. And I still had my baby who was feeding like every hour to 2 hours. So I was also sleep deprived and I was breastfeeding as well. So, but all in all, honestly, I still count my birth experience as positive. Even though the end may have seemed negative, for me, it's still very positive because I think I got to see the hand of God through it. And I had so much support and so much love in that room. And I really enjoyed the experience of bringing my baby into the world. And I felt like it was such a great privilege and a great honor to be able to go through that pain, but for such a beautiful purpose. And now my baby is here and I don't remember any of it. As soon as she was born, I think I immediately forgot what contractions even felt like. And even till this day, I couldn't tell you. I can tell you the story because I remember the details. I can't tell you what it felt like. I can't tell you the pain. I couldn't even tell you what any of it felt like in terms of tangibility, which I think is such a beautiful blessing that we forget, because if we didn't, I don't think we'll do it again. Yeah, that was my birth story. I hope it wasn't too scary for those who have not given birth yet or are looking forward to doing that one day. Honestly, Birth is such a beautiful experience. It's a natural experience. It's a God-ordained experience. And I hope that everybody who sees this video goes into their own birth experience with hope. Some things that I think helped me through my birth is just allow the contractions to happen. Don't try and fight them, accept them. That's the best way that will let your body relax. And really breathe. Oh my gosh, the breathing techniques genuinely saved my life. And have the right people in the room. If you have the right birth partners, you will honestly feel like you can do anything. And just remember, each contraction is getting you closer and closer to your baby. And that's what my sister taught me. And it's like climbing up a hill. You get to the top of a hill and it's going to be really, really intense, but then you come back down. And just take it one contraction at a time. Don't see the whole mountain, take it one hill at a time. And those are some things that really, really helped me. I may share some things I wish I knew or things that I wish I would have done differently, but for now, this was my experience, and that's what I got to have. I hope you enjoyed this story. I hope it wasn't too all over the place. I'm sure I missed out certain details. I'll probably include it in a separate video. Please let me know down below if you've already given birth, what your birth experience was like. If you're anticipating giving birth, share any things you're excited about, things you're scared about, and I'll try my best to answer as many questions as I have in the comments. Yeah, like, comment, share, subscribe, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!